Something notable and historic happened in the year 1958. A Nigerian novelist wrote a particular novel that went on to challenge the stereotypes and wrong perceptions that the outside world had about Africa. Now, this is why this was important. Because it was a time and a season where Africa's voice needed to be heard globally. Our voice was often silenced. Our stories were told by outsiders. We were called primitive people. We were called ones who lacked history. But you see, this Nigerian writer was able to rise with a very powerful truth. A truth that was locked up in a statement. And the statement says, until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Now, here's what that statement meant to me. It says, until you and I begin to rise to forge our own destinies and write our own stories and begin to channel ourselves to the path we want to go to, the highest we will ever become is an extra character in someone else's story. This man is none other than Chinua Achebe, the writer of Things Fall Apart, a novel that went on to change the narrative of Africa globally. But here's my point. Seated here are men and women who have certain statements, certain mantras, certain stories. Some you hold so dear, while some you so dread. You see, entering into the year 2025, that statement which I held so dear was the statement, you rise high to your goals, but you fall back to the consistency of your routines. Now, this is what I meant. It says, aside being excited about your goals alone, you must build the necessary tenacity, discipline, and courage to follow those goals through. But the statements I held so dear, I realized that most of the times, it's not as powerful as the statements you so fear or you so dread. Because it's as though the things you fear the most ends up being the things that are before you, right? For me, especially as a young teenage guy growing up in Angwan Rukuba, where it was as though the path to success was really vague. The role models were really few. That statement did something to my mind. You see, that statement was the statement, opportunity comes just once. Now, as simple as that statement sounds, it defined opportunities to me in the wrongest way. I saw opportunities to be that which I wait for, instead of that which I should create myself. You see, I thought for so long that opportunities go to the deserving. But actually, opportunities goes to those who demand for it. You see, let me give you a little bit background story of myself. I left secondary school. I was really enthusiastic. I wanted to study something professional. You know, my dad always tell me, you have to do something professional. You know, the country we are in, if you're not studying a professional course, then, I don't know. So I left secondary school. You know, there's this exam we write to enter the university. It's called JAMB, right? So I wrote JAMB twice. Something very funny, very, very dramatic. I wrote JAMB twice. Guess what? I got the same JAMB score twice. That's not all. I got the same course of study twice. A course I hated. Plant science and biotechnology. But you see, after that thing happened, it broke me. I almost felt like all hope was lost because I really wanted to make Mama proud. I wanted to study something in the medical field. Let me also do all those checkups and all. But looking back now, I'm grateful that happened to me. And you may ask why. Because then I began to redefine what opportunities actually meant. Instead of waiting for opportunities, I saw that I could actually begin to create my own opportunities. And this was how that happened. I began to look at the lives of people that I wanted to be like. The people who were in certain environments I thought were the opportune environment. And I noticed something. I noticed that they were in those environments not because those environments made them, but because they made themselves for those environments. And you see, I was able to find that out when I started. There was this publication that was released by Tech Cabal. Tech Cabal released the publication. They called it the Paystack Mafia. It was more like a publication from the PayPal Mafia that was done outside, I think around Europe or so. So here was what the Paystack Mafia was telling us. The Paystack Mafia said that every single person who worked with Paystack, how many of you are familiar with Paystack here? Paystack is one of the most valued tech company in Nigeria. I think it was sold for about $200 million, thereabout. Now, I noticed that every single person that worked with Paystack, every single person, I mean from their software developer to their back-end developer to their front-end developer to the product manager and every single person, all of them are currently leading top tech brands currently in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, in Africa as a whole. And I started asking myself, is this a coincidence? How will every single person working with this particular tech firm also be leading? I mean, companies like Mono, Chowdeck, some of the companies that you're familiar with. And then that was when I realized that they gave themselves the chance to see opportunities from where they were. They didn't just see themselves as an extra character in the story of Paystack. And then from there, I began to challenge myself, and that was what led me to create the organization known as Young Entrepreneur Society. And I told my people, I said, hey, we could actually create for ourselves what I call the unfair advantage. That if we come together and begin to look at opportunities and possibilities in a different light, then we won't be limited by our environment. And you see, moving on, I also encountered something that almost discouraged me, and it's called FOMO. How many of you are familiar with FOMO? You know, it stands for fear of missing out, right? So my first encounter with FOMO was when I had a friend, Agnes. She traveled to Lagos, and then when she returned, I engaged her in a conversation, and I asked her, how was your trip? And she started telling me how she was in a particular room with this great entrepreneur who I really, really want to meet. And she told me how in that room, the man gave opportunities to every single person in that room. I mean, from social media marketing to real estate development and marketing as a whole, because I have a brand in marketing. And I thought to myself, why is this thing not happening in my own side? People are just in a room, and at the end of the day, she told me that just few people in that room were qualified for the opportunities that man gave that day. So I began questioning my environment, specifically Angwan Rukuba. I told myself, why are the opportunities not where the qualified are? And why are the qualified not where the opportunities are? Well, you see, for so long, I was limiting my mindset because I always thought that the grass is greener on the other side. But I didn't realize that the grass is greener on the watered side. On the side you decide to cultivate, every greener side was once a dry land. But see, the moment you begin to view opportunities in a different light and begin to dream from where you are, then you will realize that you are more advantaged than every other person. You see, that fear of FOMO was what I converted to be FLOW, my topic for today. And FOMO, which once was my fear, now translated to FLOW, which stands for Forging Life Opportunities Within. And talking about within, I'm not just talking about inside of yourself, I'm also talking about within your environment. Because I realized that the greatest opportunities lies in the greatest problems. Now, the FLOW concept consists of 3 major pillars. And that's what I'm going to be taking you through tonight. Rather, today. So, the first on the list is what I call, or what I term, the awareness flow. And awareness in this context stands for something that you're able to view or something you're able to see. Because in the first place, you can't attract an opportunity that you can't see. And you see, the greatest tragedy of a man's life is not the lack of opportunity, but it's the lack of awareness. Because if you do not begin to notice that which you have around you, then you would always feel that you're disadvantaged. How many of you have heard of the red car theory before? The red car theory simply states that the moment you want to buy a red car, suddenly you begin to notice red cars everywhere, right? The moment you want to buy a shirt, suddenly the aboki on your street is wearing it. The bike man is also wearing it. It's as though it's everywhere. But you might want to ask yourself, did they just buy the shirt or did they just buy the car when you wanted to buy it? No. Your mind or your brain just tuned in. And this is something that is also psychologically proven to be called a particular cell that is in our brain called the reticular activating system. And this is what it does. It filters out and brings into focus that which we've made priority. And that's exactly how opportunity works. That until you begin to make certain things a priority, you won't see opportunities. Your brain won't even help you. Because first of all, you have to be aware that opportunities are everywhere. And remember what I said, even in the depth of problems, that is where the greatest opportunity lies. But you see, awareness is not just enough. Because moving on, I discovered that there are a lot of people that are aware of certain problems. And then that leads me to my second point, because just like in the red car theory, awareness is what helps you see the red car. But my next point, which is attention, is what helps you walk up to the red car. Now, attention, which is my next point, just like I said, is a currency for success. Because why? Whatever you do not pay attention to can't pay you back. And most of the times we are always caught up wanting to do everything. You know, this world that we live in, there are so many distractions. The other day, I heard of a friend who just got a job on Twitter, and then suddenly, everybody wants to be on Twitter. Next thing, you go on LinkedIn, and then the profile of your neighbor, you're wondering, when did you attain all of this? But you see, in all of these distractions, one of the things you must always remember is something that my mentor said. He said, the world will only reward masters. So whatever you do not begin to pay attention to, I tell you, it won't pay you back. But moving on from that, awareness and attention, as good as it is, it can't end here, because awareness and attention alone in the flow concept is no longer going to be flow, but it's going to be a flow. Because the last point which I'm driving at now is what I term the action flow. The action flow. Now, you see, it's easy for us to become aware of things. As a matter of fact, awareness was one of the easiest for me. Recognizing the problems around me and trying to solve them, it was quite easy. Attention was a bit difficult. I really tried to focus. You know, that's when this terminology, multipotentialite, I also wanted to call myself multipotentialite, but I realized that the world only reward masters. But then I realized that action was very, very difficult. And because of so many distractions around, taking action would kind of want to be the hardest thing you want to do, because action, most of the times we limit ourselves because of certain fears. Most of the times we want to limit ourselves because we're waiting for the right time. We're waiting for the perfect time. You see this perfectionism mentality. It's killing us more than we think. And then, while I was about taking this action and finding it difficult, my mentor walked up to me and then he told me, there would never be a time that's perfect for you to do a thing. And then that was when I woke up. Because I realized that if I do not wake up and begin to take action from where I am, I will forever remain a mediocre. I will forever remain an extra character in someone else's story. So that's it about my flow concept. So first of all, be aware. Secondly, pay attention. And thirdly, take action. But let me just end with this last story that I want to leave you with. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the story of David killing Goliath. Now, in that story, if David took the courage to face Goliath on that battlefield, I hope you know David would have been crushed. Right? But I noticed something. That David didn't just appear before Goliath. He didn't just wait for the opportunity of Goliath to appear to him and then take on it. No. He began to intentionally take a step towards it. And how did he do that? Number one, he became aware of his craft. He became aware of his role. He became aware of where he was as a shepherd boy. Secondly, he began to pay attention to what was given to him. And then lastly, he began to take action when danger arrived. So, I'm going to leave you with this statement. And I want you to go with as a mantra. In the flow concept, opportunities do not go to the deserving, but they only go to the demanding. Thank you so much.